I'd like to talk with you about success and collaboration, and in doing so, I hope to touch on some of the themes that you've been hearing this morning. And the first idea of success, I think, is a very interesting and important idea, and one that is often quite narrowly understood in education. Often in education, the idea of success is very individualistic and highly economic and materialistic. And I think we should try to break that definition of success and think of success in collective terms, not excluding the individual, but certainly including everybody, not excluding economic success, but also including personal and social and cultural and political and environmental success, a much broader and holistic idea of quality of life is where I think we need to go. Let me explain what I mean by this. Could I ask you, please, to imagine that we are on a spaceship, and this is a little bit perhaps like a spaceship, and we're looking down on the Earth. And if we look down on the Earth, it's quite interesting to think about what we see when we look at humanity. And the first thing we see over time is that we live in times of unprecedented population growth, urbanization, massive migration, and technological explosions. These are three factors that define human existence today. And what that means is we live in a world that is defined by huge volatility, by incredible complexity, and by hyper-connectivity. We are more connected than we've ever been before. And these facts mean that to be successful in the modern world, we need to work with these dynamics. We need to work with volatility, complexity, and hyperconnectivity. And it also means that anyone's problems are now everyone's problems. And we live in a world of problems. We live in a world of hunger and poverty and inequity and exclusion and extremism and violence and anxiety and depression. We live in a world of pollution and climate change and resource depletion and species extinction. I apologize for being a little bit depressing there. But these are facts. And in fact, many of these issues are worse for many people, despite us having made, as a species, much progress over the past years. These are still huge problems. And what we believe now is that in order to tackle these problems, in order to be successful, in other words, we can't rely on the old models of decision-making. We can't rely on hierarchical or centralized decision-making. We can't just follow the rules in order to be a good person. In other words, we believe that we have to essentially empower everyone to contribute. We have to empower everyone to lead their own lives, to manage their own success, but also to contribute to our collective success. And we believe that a person who is empowered is a person who is empathic, a person who is thoughtful and creative and collaborative and communicative and resilient. We believe that there are some really deep human qualities that we must develop in young people in order for those young people to be successful and in order for those young people to contribute to our collective success, our collective well-being. But these deep human qualities are almost never the focus of our attention when we school young people. Our focus in education is still dominated, for most young people, by attempts to maximize academic grades, to get to university, to get into a high-paying job. That's the focus of our attention, predominantly in education. And we believe that we need to shift that focus so that we're thinking about empowering the whole human being, the whole child, the whole adolescent, to be successful and to contribute to our collective quality of life. And we think, therefore, that we should not be constrained by our own experience of education. We should not be looking backwards at the schooling that we have received, and we shouldn't just be tinkering or playing, making small adjustments to that old system, but we think rather it would be better for us as a species to look forwards and to think about providing young people with learning experiences, learning journeys, if you like, that are explicitly intended to help empower them to be change makers. And we use this word change makers to describe someone who is fully empowered with empathy and thoughtfulness and creativity and leadership and collaboration. Somebody who is fully equipped and inclined to live for the common good, to live for our collective success, in other words. So we think then we need to look forwards at the idea of providing children and adolescents with journeys, learning journeys, inside and outside of school, scaffolded throughout childhood and adolescence, and explicitly intended to help them become empowered as change makers. Now, to do this, we think we need to be collective in our action. We don't think that it makes sense for us to rely entirely on the teacher or the school to make these changes. And in fact, if you think of the experience of childhood and adolescence, the influences on that experience are very wide. They certainly include teachers and education leaders, but they also include parents and peers. They include the media. They include policymakers. They include businesses. They include culture makers. And so we believe that in order to build these ecosystems or ecologies in which every young person is having experiences that help them become change makers, we believe that we need to collaborate from across the ecosystem. Now, let's imagine we're still on that spaceship, but we're now 15 or maybe 20 years into the future, and we're looking down on Earth. And imagine that every child and adolescent in the Czech Republic is having these journeys, is on these journeys through childhood and adolescence. What will they look like? What will be involved? Well, the first thing we believe is that young people will have a much greater say, much greater ability to influence the system. They'll be trusted to make decisions in the system, much more than they are 15 years ago. We believe that parents will be much more engaged. Parents will value these kinds of journey. They'll see beyond the need for academic attainment to the need for empowering their children. Teachers and non-formal, out-of-school educators will be working together. They'll be trained differently. They'll be able to empower young people through mathematics, through sport, through art, whatever. They'll be trained differently. They will own their own professional standards. They will work together inside and outside of school. Education leaders will have authority in school and outside of school. They will be trained differently. They will have much more training in influencing the wider system. Universities will have different admissions policies. They won't just be looking for academic attainment. Universities will be looking for whole change makers, people who are making a difference in the world. Employers will be the same. They won't just be looking at academic grades. They will be looking for experience at contributing to our collective quality of life. The media and culture makers will be celebrating change making and change makers. There will be curricula and policies that support and encourage the provision of these kinds of empowering journey. Student assessments will be different. We won't only be assessing for grades. And in fact, the whole idea of assessment is probably going to change. We will be seeing peer-to-peer assessments, young people working together to help each other become more empowered. The way in which we evaluate teachers and schools will be different. We won't be evaluating teachers and schools in terms of their academic attainment only, but in terms of how effective they are at helping young people become empowered. There will be a field of research that is being applied much more effectively. A field of research in which teachers and other frontline educators and young people will be contributing on a daily basis. There will be much smarter application of technologies to build networks, to facilitate collaboration, and to empower young people. And there will be new flows of money, maybe even educational currencies, that will support these kinds of ecosystem which are provided by everyone in the ecology and in the community. This is what we at Ashoka believe needs to happen, and actually we can see this starting to happen. So this is not a fantasy. So come off the spaceship, come back to the present day, and we can see movement in each of these critical paths. And what we're currently doing as an organization is we are finding the innovators, the disruptive pioneers who are already doing this kind of work. We have 1,200 fellows who are working with young people in very progressive ways, empowering young people. We have 220 schools in 28 countries who are empowering young people. We have 35 universities in our network in 6 countries who are empowering young people. And we're now starting to find policymakers and parents and media influencers and researchers and technologists, etc., all of whom are wanting to empower young people by building these new learning ecosystems or ecologies. But it's not enough just to find these innovators. We need to connect them. And so we're bringing these people together so that they can recognize their work in this common theme, and they can find community and they can collaborate. But that's not enough, because what we then need to do is we need to organize these folk into teams who start building collaboratively the parts of these ecosystems that are required in order to change the world. And I was very interested earlier to hear your point on 16%. We think we need to start to get to the point where our innovators are working together to build these ecologies to the point at which we've achieved 16% of every child and adolescent who is having these experiences, these journeys. at the point at which 16% of children and adolescents in the Czech Republic are enjoying experiences and journeys that are explicitly intended to help them become empowered as change makers, we think the system will then change, and we think the system will tip irreversibly, and that every young person will be having these experiences and these journeys. And when every young person is having these experiences and journeys, we think we will see a completely different world, a completely different Czech Republic, a completely different, much more holistic, much healthier idea of success. Thank you.